Welcome to On the Beat, where we bring you a different Buffalo Bills beat reporter every week, exclusively on the Overreaction Sports Network.
Well, what is going on, everybody? Welcome everybody into On the Beat, a show where we bring you a different Buffalo Bills beat reporter every single week and talk about the topics swirling around your Buffalo Bills. It is right here on the Overreaction Sports Network, powered by Believe. It is so good to have you. My name is Joe Miller. You can find me on Twitter at Joe Miller Wired. That guy sitting next to me is John Fina, former Buffalo Bills offensive tackle. You can find him on Twitter at John Fina. Do us a favor, please Please subscribe, whatever platform you are consuming this video on. Please hit the like button, smash it, as the young kids say. Hit the subscribe button, tell a friend, and if you're listening in post, please subscribe as well. You can find all of our content on every social media platform. Just search Overreaction Buff. We have a website, overreactionbuffalo.com. You can find us pretty much anywhere you're looking for us, so please go look for us. But without any further ado, joining us again, a repeat offender to this show, one half of the Buffalo Shout podcast, and from Syracuse.com, a very good friend of ours, a friend of the show, Matt Parrino. How are you?
I am great. I actually did my first cold plunge today, and
you're so you walked outside in Buffalo.
I just walked outside, right?
Outside in your chonies.
My wife got me one for Christmas, and we set it up, we filled it up, and of course the hose water right now it's 45, like 44. Yep. So I put it in and did it, and I knew it was going to be awful. I didn't know how much it was going to literally hurt. Like my skin hurt. Like, and it was, but by the 2-minute mark, I was like, okay, like I'm getting through it.
Dead.
Yeah. And so we're going to go back tomorrow. And we're just going to see. We're going to keep doing it. We'll see how many days I can do it.
So I back in the recording days when I was a recording artist and we were touring and stuff like that, we were at a festival in the White Mountains up in the Northeast, and there were no showers. You basically slept in your van, in your tour van, and you bathed in the creek, the White River, I think is what it was called. Even I don't even know. I just know that it was cold, and literally getting in, and you're going,
yep.
Because your lungs are just like, no, this is not normal. So that's the only cold plunge I've ever done, other than falling through the ice at Lime Lake as a kid. That's the only cold plunge. So yeah, more power to you. Good luck with that. John, how are you?
Hey, well, we used to do that in training camp. So, not as hot in Buffalo as it is in Tucson, Arizona, but still you come off the field and you're a sweaty, hot mess, and they got the troughs filled with ice and water. And you're going now from body temp of like 104 down to about 30, 33, and you're like, that's a shock.
Yeah. That's definitely not fun. Probably it feels maybe a little good if you're coming in from football practice, I would think, but just to jump in the morning. Joe Kroom, of all people, I think is on some like crazy streak, right? Isn't Kroom at like 400 days straight or something?
Yeah, he's actually one of the people that inspired me. I was watching his journey on there on his IG. And he, of course, commented. I posted it on Facebook, and he was one of the first people to comment. Like, he's hyped up about it. So we'll see. I like the idea of maybe like reducing inflammation. Like, I'm 42 years old now, and when I work out, I feel it for 3 days afterwards. So like, if that helps with it, we'll see.
For sure.
Oh, you know what works for me, Matt, is just never working out. You don't have to go through all that crap.
I knew it was coming.
I'll tell you, the worst cold plunge I ever had was Monday night at Cleveland, the old stadium, middle 90s, winter. And by the time I got offensive linemen, have all the extra gear on, knee braces and everything, by the time I got in the shower, the water was like 8 inches deep. It was murky and the water was freezing. It reminded me of the trash compactor scene in Star Wars, except with freezing water.
Stay on top of it. Stay on top of it.
I don't think I'd ever do a cold plunge after that experience that you just described.
On a side note, before we talk Buffalo Bills, this is honest to God truth. When John and I first started doing this show and we first started getting to know each other, I asked him the obvious question as a former offensive lineman for 11 years in the NFL and who's svelte, who's not enormous. I was like, so you work out, right? He goes, well, I do some push-ups on the kitchen counter once in a while. It's perfectly straight faced. I'm like, all right. I'm over here struggling to keep under 240. You know what I mean? Like, just because I eat garbage food. But
I gotta really get back into that.
I would imagine. I wonder Is it something like where you spend your whole like life just in a gym, just like working on your body, that you just at the end of it just say, you know what? I did
I'm
that
out.
already.
They
I'm out.
smell like rubber and oil and people and the sounds. I'm just so like I'm done. I'm done. I mean,
Well,
I got a
people-
bike in the garage. I probably ought to ride that like once a month or once a quarter anyway, but I can't seem to find it.
I feel like we should start the show or just end it right here. I'm not sure which one, but Matt, it is so good to have you back on the program. We love having you on the show. Let's talk a little bit of Buffalo Bills just for a couple of minutes. Leading into Week 18, the Buffalo Bills are 13-3. We've had conversations with a lot of beat reporters, and I don't think I've asked this question necessarily to you, but how surprised are you that the Buffalo Bills, I mean, obviously leading into it, right? So we know they're 13-3. They've clinched the number 2 seed. They were in play for the number 1 for a long time. Josh Allen is having a ridiculous year. How surprised are you that the Bills are where they are at this point at 13-3, going into the season knowing what we thought was going to happen?
Well, I predicted 12 wins, so I guess I don't think I'm as surprised as some. Like I liked a lot of what we saw from Joe Brady last year, and I liked the more, when the trade happened of Stephon Diggs, the immediate aftermath was just like trying to kind of put your head around the financials of it, right? Like eating 31 million dead cap, that always felt like this huge pill to swallow for the Bills.
Right.
But when you really started thinking about what this offense could be without just having to appease that singular force in the room, and I'm not necessarily even saying all the time it was a negative force. In a lot of ways, Stephon Diggs was a positive influence in that locker room in a lot of ways. The problem, though, becomes when you're as passionate as he is, when you are as, the level of player that he is, I feel like as an offense, that's got to be a part of your identity. And we've seen it around the league in so many different instances. As good as the Bengals are this year, and everybody's talking about Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase and T. Higgins, they're sitting there at 8-8. I mean, when you have those kinds of powerful forces in a room and those personalities and the egos that have to be, that's the thing for me that's been so refreshing about this locker room and this Bills team is there is no ego. Like across the board, like you could see it in so many different ways. I'm writing about Spencer Brown at the goal line, screaming to Aaron this week for Wednesday, screaming to Aaron Cromer, who's on the headset with Brady, to get the ball to James Cook because they want to get him a touchdown because he's 2 away from the franchise record, right? And Mac Hollins, who was this afterthought of a signing in the offseason, doesn't get any good separation, right? Like he's at the bottom of that statistic. But in every other way measurable, what he's meant to the organization, the impact that he's had, I just don't think you could put a price tag on those kinds of things. And it looks like everybody's having fun. And to go through an 18-week season and then go on a playoff push and try to get to a Super Bowl, you got to be loving the shit out of it, right? Like you got to coming to work, putting the time in, doing all those kinds of things. And that to me is what's the biggest difference about this year's Bills team.
It sounds like it's becoming or has become fun for you guys too.
That was my next question. How much fun are you having?
Yeah.
I'm having a ton of fun. I mean, this is the whole way that it goes. I really enjoyed Shawn McDermott this year. Like, to be honest with you, over the last couple of years, like it feels like there's been so many like moments where he's gotten so tight, right? Like the 13 seconds debacle. And then, the way that he handled that in the aftermath, leading up to the last year when, you had that whole story come out from Tyler Dunn. And I just felt like there was so many things that were piling and piling and piling. And I don't know. I mean, there's just been this big release this year from him. He's so loose. He's so he's serious at times still. But I think the arc of Shawn McDermott has been so fascinating for me to cover. And that's really what I'm in this for, right? Is like, the stories and, chronicling all of this for everybody. And I'm having a lot of fun because, you pinch yourself sometimes. I know it's a job, but like if you would have told me 20 years ago that I'd be covering arguably as a growing up a Bills fan, the greatest player that's ever played the game. And I know that sounds hyperbolic, but man, the statistics back it up. I mean, we're talking about the greatest scorer in the history of the game, statistically, to this point in his career. And I got a front row seat for it. So yeah, I mean, it's fun. Like you go to work. And here's the juxtaposition. Antoine Staley from the New York Daily News, great friend of mine, was in town. We hung out on Saturday, and I'm just looking at him down press row yesterday, just feeling so bad for him, man. Like, you got to cover this tire fire and deal with everything going on in New York right now. And so I'm happy. Things are going really well.
To your point about Josh Allen, per OptaStats, and you probably saw this, there's 5 instances in NFL history where a quarterback has had a season with 300 plus completions, 400 plus rushing yards, 40 plus touchdowns, total touchdowns, 5 plus rushing touchdowns, and division titles. Those 5 instances are Josh Allen 2020, Josh Allen 2021, Josh Allen 2022, Josh Allen 2023, and Josh Allen 2024, to your point. So
check this out. As you say that, Greg Harvey at Between the Numbs on Twitter just put out this post. Players in NFL history to have 4,000 plus passing yards, 30 plus passing touchdowns, and 10 plus rushing touchdowns in a single calendar year. Josh Allen in 2024, Josh Allen in 2023, and that's the list.
That's the list. One of one. The dude is literally one of one. John, I'm capitalizing all the time. I apologize, but I do have one more question just around Shawn McDermott. We've talked a lot with a lot of the beat reporters that it feels like Shawn McDermott this year is just a different version of himself, a better version, as much as we hear that cliche around this locker room a lot. You know, I came here to be the best version of myself. We want that player to be the best version of themselves. And it's other than, I would say, the Rams game, I haven't seen him visibly shook in a post game. He was clearly not happy after that Rams game for whatever reason. We'll probably never truly find out. It feels like the trust that he has in Joe Brady, the trust that he has in Bobby Babich is just different than the trust that he last year was obviously completely different because he took over the defense. Right. And then obviously Ken Dorsey. But even when Dable was here and when Leslie was here, it just looks like the trust that he has in those guys is allowing him to lead different.
Yeah, and I think that like he's really close with Joe, obviously, and then by extension of Joe, Aaron Cromer. Like, to me, right. That to me was maybe one of the most important decisions that he's made at a very pivotal moment, right? Like when he brought in Aaron Cromer, they really had a problem within this offense of being one-dimensional. Yeah. We covered it for years, not being able to run the ball. The way that he's helped unlock the running game and by default, the unpredictability of this offense, I think has allowed Shawn to step back from that entirely and say, okay, I believe in this. We got this young, really bright offensive mind in Joe Brady, who's kind of leading it up, but he's got this like vice president who is so important on the field level, on game day. And then defensively, Bobby Babich has always kind of been an extension of him. It's almost been like this grooming process. And there's been some highs and lows, right? Even for Babich this year. And I think in the big moments, Shawn knows that he could always go back to, if he's got to pull it back and maybe call some of the defense, maybe in a playoff game, if things are getting tight and he just wants to own that piece as the head coach, he can always do that. But I think that, you also have to be able to execute and deliver in the big moments if you're Shawn McDermott this season. And to be operating in the way that he is, so loose, like I mentioned, is important. I will say that one decision at the goal line a couple weeks ago, it gives you a little pause for what we're about to embark on here over the next month. And you need in those moments to be prepared for them in a way that it can't be the commentator on the broadcast telling you what to do like Tom Brady did in that moment that they, shouldn't use the timeout and he uses it anyway. You can't have those moments because if they're eliminated in that way, in that facet, and Josh Allen has another all-time game or even a great game, whatever, the noise around Shawn McDermott again this offseason is going to be absolutely buzzing.
Yeah, for sure.
I had this conversation earlier on a separate podcast. If Shawn McDermott has a coaching gaffe that ends the season, is he on the hot seat? My answer to that was no. There's enough executable moments in a game that fall short. The ball isn't round. It doesn't always bounce correctly, but I stand by that. And I think we get a little bit of what you would say recency bias or, drunk on our own success, where we just think that the natural evolution of this team, of Josh Allen, should be a Super Bowl victory, and anything less is a fireable offense. And I can't buy into that. And I don't know what your take is on that, but I'd love to hear it.
It's a great question because I have it with family members all the time. I mean, I was just at my dad's retirement party 2 days ago, and I have an uncle and a cousin who had me cornered, and they're not Shawn McDermott fans. And this comes up at every family get together because I end up de facto being this defender in so many ways when I've been very critical of Shawn in some of these big moments. I think rightfully so. But to your point, John, I agree with you. The grass isn't always greener on the other side. There's a couple of things that would have to happen for it to work to move on from Shawn McDermott. Number one, you're going to have to trust Terry Pegula to find the right head coach. And we've seen in the other organization, it's been coach after coach after coach, and it's just been they're spinning their wheels. And I think that they got lucky in a lot of ways with Shawn McDermott. It didn't go well with Rex before that. And to the point that, well, it's just go out and hire like the smartest, brightest young coordinator and bring him in. Ben Johnson is everybody's favorite name to throw around, right? We don't know anything about how Ben Johnson is going to be as a CEO of a team. We know he could make an offense. We know he can put together a scheme. We know he could call a game. That is literally the last priority when it comes to being an excellent head coach. Kyle Shanahan has dialed things up in San Francisco year after year after year. He's gotten to 2 Super Bowls. They haven't won one. So in a lot of different ways, him and Shawn McDermott are in the same boat. They're both sitting here hired in the same year without a Super Bowl ring on their finger. And it's only going to take one run through the playoffs, staying healthy enough, making the right plays in the big moment for all these detractors to kind of flip on it. And I just think at this point, there's so much continuity built within the organization and a streamlined relationship between Shawn and Brandon Beane and the synergy there. To break that up now, I think they're kind of a package deal. I'm probably more bullish on Brandon Beane than probably most of Bills Mafia. I think the job that he's done as the moves that he's made, looking down the line and being ahead of the game in a couple of spots, specifically this last offseason, moving on from 5-6 household names when a lot of people were calling him nuts for doing so. I think he's been really important. So I just think that you keep seeing this through, and I get the concern about Josh Allen's prime, but it's not all about one player. It's the whole thing's got to come together, and you got to get a little bit lucky, which I think, listen, if you look at the Chiefs, you got to get a little bit lucky. Mahomes, Kelsey, and Chris Jones have to stay healthy through all the playoff run every single year. And for the most part, they have.
Yeah, and I would add to that, it would be really a strange development if somehow this season doesn't end up with hoisting the Lombardi, or at least competing for it in the last game of the season, that you can look and fire a guy who really cobbled together a team with unknowns, with one receiver who caught a ball, and from Josh Allen, with no dedicated number one receiver, and without a finger quotes game wrecker on defense. And again, and with the attrition that we suffered in previous playoff years, specifically last year, I would just be beside myself. Like the catastrophe of rebuilding a new staff. And I think this creativity between Joe Brady and Cromer and Josh Allen, where they are adding just a variety of plays and formations and motions that we have not seen before, is just, it just invigorates me. It reminds me of when I was 12 years old, playing Nerf football in the dirt yard with my buddies, where we were just making stuff up. And it just seems like such a fun brand of football for the players to execute and for the fans to ingest. And I just couldn't imagine letting a guy go who's put together a 13-3 or 13-4 or 14-3 season after all that.
Yeah, you definitely want to be getting somebody that you know what you're getting, right? You're trading for a Sean McVay. You're trading for somebody that's like, not Sean Payton. He's not going to be available. But anyways, talking with Matt Parrino here on the Overreaction Sports Network on the beat. Let's switch over to just this next week's game. So the Buffalo Bills are kind of already getting healthy at the right time. So a bunch of guys that are limited. I think they came out of yesterday's game, or I should say Sunday's game, pretty healthy. What do you see kind of going into week 18? Who's going to start? Who's going to play? Who's going to be scratched? What are your feelings kind of coming into week 18? Is Josh going to start and continue his consecutive starting streak? And then who else do you see maybe playing and not playing?
I think Josh starts. I think he plays maybe a series, maybe less than that. I mean, the way Shawn kind of termed it today, he said it's not going to be a very long start for him. So maybe it's just a play or two. We'll see. I know a lot of fans are hoping that he plays a drive to give him a chance at another touchdown to add to the MVP case. But to be honest with you guys, I think the MVP is already over. Like, I think that, there's so many things that go into this. And I know you guys have probably been having this conversation like everybody else ad nauseum. But I mean, there's so much that goes into the year that he's had. And, some of the things that I think are working against Lamar, one more than anything, is just having Derrick Henry in the same backfield. Josh doesn't have that guy, to John's earlier point. So I think Josh plays a couple plays, if not a series. I think James Cook is in the game until he goes out of over 1,000 yards and a touchdown. Because that could tie the franchise record. I think they're cognizant of that. How they work the offensive line is going to be interesting. I don't think Deion Dawkins plays. Maybe not Connor McGovern, because center's so important. Maybe letting Anderson play and test somebody. This is a good game to test out some people that you didn't get in certain roles. Alec Anderson has been in that jumbo role all year. What about maybe throwing Tylen Grable into that role, or Vandemark, or somebody else? Maybe Will Clapp up off the practice squad if that's who they decide to elevate. Micah Hyde will not be elevated this week, Shawn McDermott said.
Those are my questions.
Hey, I was right.
Guys, he is literally the AJ Klein of this postseason run. The only difference is he decided not to go on vacation and get interrupted. Like, he's just in the facility and he's ready to go in case they need him, in case of emergency. But listen, they're getting healthier. I think Damar Hamlin can play a little bit this week. It sounded like Shawn wants to get him back up to speed. Cole Bishop probably again. I don't play Taylor Rapp. I might not have even played Taylor Rapp last week. I think he's that important to the defense. And then I think they keep going with Milano for at least a half, like shaking off some of that rust and letting him continue to get out there and get reps. And I think that allows Dorian Williams to get healthy. I think we could see a full start for Buffalo Joe, by the way. I don't think Terrell Bernard's going to play. I think Bills Mafia is going to be absolutely buzzing to see a whole game of Joe Andreessen, who I thought played pretty well when he got in the game the other day. And then maybe even the debut of Edufon Ulofoshio, the fifth-round draft pick.
Yeah, so you're looking at what? Bernard sitting, probably, hopefully, obviously Milano sitting, hopefully Dorian Williams sitting. I don't think there's any reason to play him. So now you're talking about Spector, and you're talking about Buffalo Joe and Ulofoshio and a lot of these young guys, and that was kind of the question. Are they going to bring up some of these practice squad players to kind of take this, to spell out some of the starters that need to sit? Bishop and Damar Hamlin is an interesting conversation. We know that Bishop was drafted right high. I don't know what the heir apparent of. There's an expectation that he is going to be a starter as a safety. The limited tag has stayed on Damar long enough for me that I wonder if they're trying to get him ramped up and get those reps that he missed earlier in the season. But it looks like he's doing a really good job. He's starting to really feel himself in that defensive backfield. Is it a sooner or later question with him as far as taking over? Because I don't know that, as much as Rapp has been very valuable to this defense, Damar has made some mistakes. I know that Buffalo loves him. We all love him. We know what he went through. We were all there. We were all watching. We were all part of it. But at the end of the day, the best guy plays, right? So do you feel like there's potentially some movement there? Is Bishop going to take that spot maybe in the playoffs, or is it Damar?
It's a great question. I think that the way I've coined the phrase on the post-game show is, like, for me, it's 75-25 for Cole Bishop right now. 75% of the time you're sitting back saying, wow, this is exactly what Brandon Beane kind of laid out when they moved up to get him in the draft. He's really physical in the run game, which I don't know if Damar gives you that. Now, I will say, I think Damar has been a little bit of a better tackler than he was 2 years ago over the course of the long season. But there's still moments where, from an angles perspective and just like a short area quickness perspective, he's just lacking, and it's not even anything that he can do about it. It's just, you take the wrong angle, you're a split second short. He doesn't have the athleticism to recover, whereas I think Cole Bishop does. Now, if you saw late in the game, and I don't know whose responsibility it was, Bishop was way out of place for one of the Jets' final touchdowns. It was garbage time. It could have been just a miscommunication, whatever the case may be. The games are going to get harder. The offenses that they face are going to be more complicated. Communication is going to be at an all-time level of importance. And so that's the question I think Bobby and Shawn have to ask themselves. Do they trust Cole enough? Does Taylor trust him enough to be out there? Because I do think he gives you more, especially in a matchup with Baltimore, where you're going to need to get physical in the box. You're going to need both safeties to come up and be willing tacklers and really lean on the athleticism, where I wouldn't be against either him playing or at least going with some kind of rotational role where Bishop plays on early downs and then you bring in Damar to play the deep safety spot.
Yeah, for sure. John?
No, I love it. I mean, this is exactly the type of analysis that we get to, conjure, but Matt's bringing a little bit more depth. He obviously studies the secondary a little bit deeper, the safety position than Jerry and I do. But I couldn't agree with you more that the problem is you're trading a little bit of experience for a little bit of athleticism, and you just never know when you got to make that decision and how it's going to be right. So, rotationally, you can plug and play the right guy when it's pretty obvious, but you also, you have to have the right personalities when you're rotating guys that understand that here's the reason why. This is our goal. You're like, I'm coming off the field. Why am I coming off the field? And, you have to be able to have the type of locker room that I think we have, where you have personalities that can absorb that and make sure that, and when you come to the sideline, you're out for a play or two, you're out for that play. And there's a groove and a flow to the game that is so much different when you're on the field, play after play after play, than if you're, alternating and going in from the sideline.
Yeah, for sure. One last question for you, Matt, here on New Year's Eve, when the show is going to be aired. But before we get into that last question, why don't you tell everybody where they can find you, they can find your work, and they can connect with you on social media.
Yeah, at Matt Parrino is probably the best place to go for everything. It all kind of funnels through that account. I'm also over on Blue Sky, Instagram. I think I got a Facebook account too. I don't know.
Are you the only one left on Blue Sky? It seems like no. It seems like there's a mass exodus, and now I don't hear about Blue Sky at all anymore. Sorry,
I'm on both. What I do like about Blue Sky,
active on Blue Sky.
I am active on Blue Sky. You know what I like about it?
What's that?
The thing I still like, and I have no issues on X other than the fact that there's so much filler crap in my timeline and in my DMs. So like what I've liked about Blue Sky is like I'll post something on there and then there'll be like 17 replies and they're all actual people replying and actually asking questions or having comments. Nice. And so I kind of like, it's a throwback to the old Twitter, so I've enjoyed it from that perspective. But you're right. Like it was a great like influx at the beginning of it, but it does seem to have tapered off quite a bit.
Gotcha. Well, super good having you join us as always. Last question for you. So I think the Buffalo Bills fans, the Bills Mafia's biggest concern is the recurring nightmare, right? So getting to the playoffs, you've got Josh Allen. We've already talked about it, 1 of 1. We've talked about this offense, Joe Brady. We've talked about Aaron Cromer and Josh and James Cook and the guys that are on this offense and like what they can do. And the recurring nightmare is that defense, right? Just lets us down in a game where we really need them to either pick up the offense or at least make a stop, and they just can't do it. I guess the question is for you as a journalist, a guy that covers this football team, seeing the way the defense is played, aside from this past weekend against the Jets, and the Jets are a dumpster fire, but even against the Patriots and before that, what is the level of concern for you going into the tournament, the single elimination tournament that are the playoffs in the NFL, for this defense to hold up for 4 games? Because that's what they got to do. They got to hold up for 4 straight games, right? I
know this is probably going to get me. It's going to get clipped out and played when the defense loses them a game in a couple of weeks here. But if that happens, I think that the thing that you've been waiting for, if you're a Bills fan, is to see what this thing looks like with all the pieces healthy going into the playoffs. And that's really where they're at right now. And I thought last week, Ed Oliver and Daquan Jones specifically, that looked like last year's first 5 games where Daquan Jones was healthy. He was firing off the ball. He was a problem in the backfield for running backs. And listen, Breece Hall and that interior offensive line for the Jets the week prior against a really good Rams defensive line, they were really good. Like I thought that they were going to give the Bills potentially some problems. And whether it was Rousseau on the outside, Von Miller as a pass rusher, like everybody's healthy, knock on wood. And that's a huge piece of this thing. DeJuan Smoot is like this sneaky, like linchpin to all of this because he's so good as an outside edge setter, but also in the run game, and he can move inside, do all those kinds of things. And then, man, if that's the Matt Milano that now we're going to start to see over the next couple of weeks, you could build on that. And then maybe, I know a lot of people want Dorian Williams, and I get it, but I do still think that if you can get Matt Milano ramped up here and we see even 80% of what he was, that's an upgrade over as good as Dorian Williams has been this year. So it's about, can he do it consistently? Does he really trust the bicep? I think that's one of my big takeaways from watching Milano the last couple of weeks is that I don't think he's fully trusting that as a tackler yet. And this last Sunday was the first time where it felt like he did on a lot of plays, which I think is progress. So we'll see how that materializes. And then, man, Christian Benford and Rasul Douglas, to me, for my money, as good of a corner duo in the league. And then you just got to stay healthy at safety and then make that decision with Bishop. And if that's the way that they go, this could be a real big litmus test for Shawn McDermott too. Because down deep, old school Shawn McDermott mindset probably veers Damar Hamlin. The true growth test is going to be if he really does lean into Cole Bishop over the next couple of weeks. That could be a really big energizer for this defense because I think Cole Bishop, with everybody healthy and everybody out there, watch him fly around. Let's see what it looks like, especially against Denver. Maybe if it doesn't go well against Denver in the opening round, if that's how it ends up shaking out, maybe you make a change for Baltimore. But I keep kind of seeing how this thing looks like the more we sit here and talk about and think about it.
Absolutely. Love it. You heard it here first, Bills Mafia. Matt Parrino is high on the Bills defense going into the playoffs, which I think we are too. Yes, John?
I am. I love the Matt Milano commentary. I've been tracking him since he's come back, and I've seen significant improvement each week. It is hard to decide Dorian Williams, Matt Milano. I think the experience factor with Matt Milano is huge deep into the playoffs. And the last point I'd make is I think attrition really hurt us last year, the injuries, late in the season. And, as you said, knock on wood, this game is a war of attrition. It is 17 games and it is a slog. And I don't care if you have an injury that ends up on the page or not on the page. Every single guy in that locker room that's playing 40 plus plays a week, you feel it. It starts in November and you're like, this doesn't feel like July anymore. And it just stacks up and there is no getting back to, I feel like it's July again. So I'm happy to see that we're getting healthy at exactly the right time.
Guys, knock on wood, the only guy on injured reserve right now for the Bills is Balin Spector, who went on it last week.
That's right.
Tommy Doyle, Travis Clayton, Shane Buechele, sure, like they're all on there, but they're not really parts of this thing. So that's the thing. Like the Bills in this entire run with Josh Allen, I don't think have ever been this healthy going into the playoffs.
Yeah. You're super right. Matt, thank you so much for hanging out with us. Happy New Year to you and your family. Any final thoughts or words for the Bills Mafia before we get you out of here?
Thank you for having me on. Love both of you gentlemen. You guys do a great job. Great part of the Bills community, and look forward to our next chat.
Excellent. Let's see. Tomorrow, Wednesday, return to the Hump Day Hotline with myself and Jay Spence, the King. And then Thursday, the Big O Show with Jerry Ostrowski, your first preview of the Buffalo Bills versus the Patriots round 2 in a meaningless football game. Actually, it's not meaningless for the Patriots. They need to lose to get the number 1 seed, but we'll see how that goes. But ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for tuning into On the Beat on the Overreaction Sports Network, powered by Believe. For me, for John, for Jerry, for Matt Parrino, we love you guys. We appreciate you. We'll talk to you soon. Go Bills.
Go Bills.
Go Bills.